Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Crit Hit Reviews with your host, Arlyeon. On today's episode, I'll be talking about Terrible Toybox's point-and-click adventure, Thimbleweed Park. Find out if I had a blast monkeying around, or if I thought tumbleweeds would have been more apt. The story kicks off with our protagonist, a mysterious man waiting to meet his contact in a clandestine meeting. He's dead. Okay, here's our actual protagonists, Agent Ray and Agent Ray's FBI agents who have recently arrived in Thimbleweed Park to investigate said sordid demise. Definitely not to use said murder as a pretext to pursue their own personal agendas. That'd be ridiculous. Now, whilst that's a pretty good summary of how things kick off, it really doesn't take long at all for players to come across the simple fact that things get weird quickly in this quaint little town. The streets lay mostly empty, just lined by the husks of shops who have long since fallen into disrepair. And the residents are... okay, they're just weird. Maybe none so much as the Sheriff Areno, the Coroner Abu, or the Pigeon Brothers, but, you know, they're pretty damn weird. And the additional playable characters also mostly follow suit. Given there's Ransom, the jerk clown, a friggin' ghost, and a video game dev. That last one's a little less weird and more on the nose, but still. As the story progresses, it definitely continues to get more intricate, with a healthy dose of comedy and weirdly meta notes. Seriously, there's a lot of referential material to adventure gaming and the state of things as a game, and yet whilst I certainly could appreciate the way the story unfolds, I will admit that the ultimate conclusion to the game felt ultimately rather underwhelming, especially in the face of a number of story elements which led up to it. Whilst it does make a peculiar sort of sense in context, it also manages to make a number of earlier plot leads and chunks of foreshadowing more or less pointless? And as revelations go, it's nothing really mind-bending in the face that things that are considered canon or the overarching narrative of the game. That said, the overall journey to get there is an enjoyable process, especially if you're a fan of point-and-click games. A lot of the genre staples will feel fairly familiar, though you are provided with the luxury of some tasty verb buttons to better customize just how exactly you're interacting with the objects you're clicking on. Overall, the puzzles are fairly clever in the game, though they do require you to be astute about your surroundings, as some of them may require you to venture back to an area you've been to in order to discover, let's say, something you may have long overlooked, like a comic book. More than once, in fact, I found myself completely lost about what it was I needed to do next, and it may have taken me a decidedly lengthy chunk of time to finally bumble together a solution. Mind you, this was more out of stubbornness than anything, given there is a hint line that you can dial up in the game which provides you some much needed direction towards advancing the overall questy storyline bits if you're completely stumped. Or, you know, if your resolve just happened to break late game, leading to a couple instances of using it, that being stumped and just completely broken as a person, yep. Honestly, though, I didn't really feel that it was due to the game being unfair. Sure, there's some devious adventure game red herrings in the form of items you collect that end up never having a use. In fact, some of them are literal garbage cluttering up your inventory, including some pieces of dust that you can acquire for a set of achievements, but which serve no other purpose, and which are obtained by pixel hunting. Beyond that, it manages to avoid pixel hunting pretty neatly, as well as equipping players with the ability to see all interactable objects in a room just simply by holding tab. I might have forgotten about this for a while, but I entirely remembered by the end of the game, which helped quite a bit once I realized I could just walk through rooms holding it down. Just because a few times, it really did just direct me towards what was left to do. Just don't count on it for finding any dust. And if you would like to do a more streamlined and altogether straightforward experience with less puzzles, you can also choose to casual mode instead of expert mode, which omits a number of puzzles to provide a overall less challenging experience.
Taught me to save often. That was true up until
Now, in the
Monkey
music
Island.
department, their application of themes did help a lot to give ambience to the overall experience. Like, I found myself genuinely taken off guard how good the hotel's theme was, for instance, and the way it managed to evoke a genuinely mysterious air to it.
It is.
Beyond that, a lot of the music, even when it's upbeat, manages to complement the overall theme of the game quite well.
I think I've had it.
And in the visual department, I was just super happy with Thimbleweed Park at large. The character animations were a blast, the town was great to navigate, and I was definitely fond of the fact that objects in the environment were generally fairly apparent even without the tab button, making things easy to locate. Also, the inventory was snazzy. With that aside, we're down to the finale, so let's boil things down. On the mechanics side of things, I definitely dug Thimbleweed Park, as in experience, it was an incredibly fun trip, and ended up feeling rather clever whenever I managed to piece together one of its puzzles. Also, I can appreciate the tools that are provided to the players, just to better tailor how difficult their journey is going to be, as well as the elements which help alleviate some of the difficulty in it. Thank you, highlighting tool and hint line. The graphics of the game were also a treat, as I found myself just discovering new animations for characters and being incredibly pleased with how it all looked. And the music was very much a strong element that accompanied the game throughout. Which honestly leaves the fact that its biggest and most egregious failing, at least in my own opinion, is the manner in which the game is resolved. I couldn't help but feel it took a bit of the punch out of the experience, especially after a certain amount of effort was put into foreshadowing, only for things to somewhat abruptly come to a conclusion that ultimately felt underwhelming. Whilst I can certainly appreciate that it is an interesting take, and the manner in which it's concluded is fun, the way it was handled contributed to invalidating a lot of what's done as a player, the events leading up to the conclusion, as well as the overall ambience Thimbleweed Park had built up over the course of the game. And there's just a part of it that I think that was incredibly insulting, which was just more or less the way it's all but spelled out for players early on, and yet it's then treated as a major reveal at the finale. Whilst there's some fundamental hints leading to this being a dilemma, I still came away feeling like it was the weakest part of the experience overall. Griping aside, however, the journey getting there was a major blast, both for the creepy ambience it builds up until it decides to nosedive into oblivion, and it was a complete joy to hang out as Ransom the jerk-ass clown and Agent Ray. They're delightful source of snark, though Ransom does sort of lean himself more towards the caustic sick burn side of things, so I mean, if you're a sweet cinnamon roll, Ransom might end up being your least favorite of the characters. In any case, I came away from the game feeling that it was a hit. Something that I would recommend to most people, and especially if they're seeking a puzzling experience, just that it might fall a bit flatter on the narrative side of things. That aside, thanks for tuning in. If you agree, disagree, or just have something to say to me, feel free to comment. And for those interested in more indie reviews, developer interviews, podcasts, or our Monday TTRPG content, hit the subscribe button and the bell so you know when there's a new release. There's also a Discord, which you can click the link in the banner or the description so you can become a part of our community, the Crit Hit Cauldron. Lastly, if you'd like to help support the channel, we do have a coffee currently running now to help supplement funds for our lovely editor Shrimp, and to make sure we can continue to provide quality content. Again, check the description and banner for them links. And if you feel we might be better served with a Patreon, feel free to mention that. The only reason we don't have one is I wasn't really sure if there was an interest. That said, I'll catch you on the next episode of Crit Hit. Take care till then, folks.